After years and years of photographing my hometown, it's really hard for me to find something new here. I gravitate towards the compositions that have worked in the past and simply rely on the conditions and the light to give them a breath of fresh air. But I want to see anew, I want to find all new images, and that's why I've decided to limit myself for a few days to one and only one lens. Not an easy one, no, actually the least used lens in my bag, the 135mm. This little project is not about using a specific lens, it's about setting limitations, setting boundaries to force me to be more creative. I usually shoot with a super zoom lens, which lets me capture anything I want. This one though, this one is really going to limit what I can do out there, and is going to change the way I approach my photography. They say that camera gear doesn't matter, but it surely can be the spark that you need. As soon as I mounted the 135 on my camera, I started scanning the environment and taking pictures. One of my first subjects were, well, antennas on the roofs of the buildings. They are everywhere in my hometown, something I should have played with before. It's not the most beautiful thing, but they can make for interesting photographs. The reason why I chose the 135 and not any other prime lens like a 50 or even an 85 is because it's quite the opposite of what I would normally do here. I would usually come on these very narrow streets with a wide-angle lens or a normal lens at the very least. This lens is just too long to capture almost anything here, so it's forcing me to look at different things that I would normally not look at. And that so far has been looking up and capturing things like the antennas that I talk about, but also capturing close-ups of doors like that one. You see, a 135 is a pretty long lens when shooting in narrow streets. I wanted to capture more of this door, but I couldn't back up any more, so I had to make what I could with what I had. And this is actually what I was looking for with this project. I needed to be forced into making something I didn't see at first. I had to navigate plenty of obstacles when shooting in town, trying to overcome the long focal length. But even in the countryside, this lens proved to be quite a challenge. Like photographing this big tree in the fog, doing it with a 135mm lens was pretty hard as I kept backing up, but it was never enough. Zoom with your feet, they say, until you can't go any farther, of course. This time, the most obvious shot didn't work. Back in town, the 135 really pushed me to look beyond what I had seen before. My go-to shots, usually much wider photographs, were not possible now. I had to go with compositions and subjects I wasn't used to photograph. And even though the images I was making weren't very good, it was opening my mind to new subjects, and I started to notice things that I hadn't noticed before. And if shooting at 135 was already hard enough, a silly mistake was making it even more of a challenge. Oh shoot! I knew there was something off. I had my camera in APS-C mode, so instead of 135 I was shooting pretty much at 200 equivalent. That's why I found it so challenging to shoot this morning here in town. I'm shooting a pretty big antenna there. The framing is a little bit tight because I want to capture the roofs of the buildings around, so I wish there was more space behind me, but there's a wall, so I'm gonna have to cut out the antenna on the top a little bit, which is okay. There are also two storks on it. I'm just waiting for them to do something, to fly or something to make the photo a little bit more interesting. Storks are actually a pretty good subject for the 135. It is cold outside today, but I need to get rid of my yellow coat because it seems to scare them away. Well, I'm wearing all black today and they still flew away. I'm freezing, it's so cold. So I'm leaving, and anyway, the 135 didn't do much for me here because I'm used to shooting the storks with long telephoto lens, so I didn't really see anything new this time. The storks didn't work out, but there is no shortage of moving subjects to photograph around here. I was driving back home, but I had to stop really quick here. I'm actually on the sidewalk because there is a bunch of birds flying and making a lot of crazy formations, and I've been photographing them with the 135. It's almost the perfect focal length for this shot, so I was very lucky that I had it mounted on my camera. Not only was the 135 the ideal focal length for this shot, but the fast 1.8 aperture also let me use fast shutter speeds in an already pretty dark environment. Otherwise, the image could have been showing blurry stains instead of birds. After a couple of days shooting in town, I headed to the countryside, where I was sure the open spaces would let me put this lens to good use. So I took the same paths I always take, and I worked on compositions I had made before, but in a very different way. It's too bad there didn't used to be a fence right here. I would have loved to get closer to that tree and to those posts over there. I already have those shots, but not with a 135. Don't tell anybody. Well, that was technically trespassing, and I got my feet very wet now. It's very, very cold, but totally worth it. I think I got a good shot of that post with the tree in the background. I think it's the favorite so far this morning. What a beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning we have today. Walking is by far my favorite way to go with photography, but sadly this was going to come to an end for this project. You see, I made a rookie mistake. I overdid my running, and shin splints had me in pain for days. So I had to find another way. I should ride my bike more often for photography. It does take you to places where the car just can't, at least my car. And it's faster than walking. I guess I still prefer walking for photography because you can take it slower, and you can pay more attention to what's around you. But it's a nice way to do photography for sure. It never ceases to amaze me that after all this time and after all these years, I still find new places here in town. I just took this path that I had never taken before because I thought it was private property, I guess. But I found a shed there in the distance that I'm trying to photograph. I think it looks pretty nice. I'm framing a tree on the bottom left, the shed in the middle, and then the trees in the distance on the top right. And you know what? I'm gonna cheat here a little bit. I'm gonna set the camera to APS-C mode to get just the shed and that tree in the frame. I think it looks beautiful that way. I'm still shooting with just one lens. Oh, it is uphill a little bit. Will you look at that? That is a beautiful tree that I just saw by chance while I was riding down this hill. It's beautiful, but the 135 is fine, the framing is fine. I'm just a little bit too late today. If I was here a couple of hours ago or so, when it was a little bit foggier, this image would have worked much better, because right now there is no separation between the tree and the ones in the background. It's still a beautiful image, but it's one that I would love to work on under the right conditions. So I'm gonna set a pin here on Google Maps so I remember where this tree was. Maybe we can come back tomorrow. All right, not even 24 hours later, we are back at the same spot. Hopefully you can see the tree there in the background. It is foggier today, way foggier. I'm gonna say that it's even too foggy because now you can barely see the trees in the background, so we are missing that context. It's actually almost perfect. Yeah, there could be just a little bit less fog to get more of the trees in the background. But this is amazing. It looks beautiful. Well, this was a fun little project. I think that keeping things interesting can make your photography thrive and avoid burnout. That's why I love doing both, traveling to new locations with my super zoom lens and capturing whatever I see, and doing photography in places that I know very well, like my hometown, by limiting myself with prime lenses, like in this case the 135. I believe this is the reason why I love photography even more today than I did when I got started several years ago, even after years and years of daily practice at the same locations for most of the time. So what about you? Do you ever play with self-imposed limitations to force you to be more creative? What are they? Let me know in the comments. And if you don't, this is something that you might want to give a try. I encourage you to do so, and of course I'm not telling you to go out and buy a 135mm lens. You can try to do something with whatever you have already. It doesn't have to be a camera gear related limitation. It could be more about your subjects or the locations where you go. Maybe you limit yourself to capturing just one thing, one subject, to shoot at a certain time of the day, I don't know, between 8:30 and 9 in the morning. Anything really works, because remember, this is not about making great images, this is about playing, about experimentation. I didn't make amazing images with this little project of mine, but it really opened my mind, opened my eyes to subjects that I hadn't considered before. And this practice really does make a difference. Before letting you go, I wanted to thank my patrons, the people who make all of this possible. Over there on my Patreon page, I share behind the scenes, like the contact sheets with all the photographs I take. I'm just now going through all the photos I took in Scotland. We hold the occasional live stream and more. Follow the link in the description down below if you want to support my work and get even more from me. Today I want to highlight the work of one of my patrons, in this case Sean, a fellow photographer from Nevada. I'll be leaving the link to his Instagram in the description. There you will find those amazing Nevada landscapes, including fighter jets, of course, and many more from the American Southwest. He also has some lifestyle photos in black and white, square format, and they look great. Thank you so much, Sean, for your support. Okay, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.